Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first marketing masterclass of 2022. Here we are back again after a almost 6 week break. So we are back and joined today by Vix Anderton, and we are going to be talking all about recovering from perfectionism. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Simon Batchelor. I'm the co-founder of Better, Bolder, Braver, along with Frances, who could be this side of me, she could be that side of me, I don't know. But Frances, over to you.
Thanks, Simon. I'm in the middle at the moment on my screen. My name is Frances Chlasty, and I'm the other co-founder of Better, Bolder, Braver. And very pleased to have Vix here with us today. Vix?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, it's fun to be here.
We're going to be talking about many, many things today. I'm sure it's really a joy to have you. But we've also discussed potentially just doing a quick exercise. It will become clear in the chat as to why you are very well placed to do this exercise at the beginning. And we haven't, as I've discussed with you, done anything like this on the Better, Bolder, Braver Marketing Masterclass to date. So this is an original thing. Vix is going to invite us all to do a little bit of embodiment work just for a couple of minutes before we get into a discussion. So I'm going to hand over to Vix now.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a very simple exercise to help us all arrive and be in a place where we can be ready to do well. So whatever that means for you, if it's your lunch break, maybe you're catching this recording and you've been kind of super busy, but a place where you get to decide how you want to be for the next hour. Either listening to this or for the three of us participating in this. So to start with, I'm going to invite you to do a little check-in to notice how you are now. So you might like to close your eyes for this, if that helps you focus your attention internally. If your eyes are open, I suggest you allow your eyes to rest on something that feels nice to look at. So it could be a plant, a window, a photograph. Notice the places that your feet are touching the floor. Notice how your bum is touching the chair. If you were sat in paint, what would be the imprint of your bum on the chair? You take a very quick stock check of how you are, how it is to be you right now. And if you're up for it, as you open your eyes, if your eyes are closed, come back for a moment and share with us 3 words that describe something about how you are. So your words don't need to be coherent, they don't really need to make sense. The only thing I'm going to say is that you're not allowed to use the words fine, good, or okay. Oh, so I notice I'm in hot anticipation, thirsty. Busy, as of hopeful, nice. So, having noticed how you are, and you can be doing this if you're on the recording as well. So I am going to invite you to take 3 breaths with me. So I'm going to guide you in this breath. It's going to bring you back to a place of center, essentially, a place where you can choose how you want to be next. So for this one, I suggest you keep your eyes open, but allow your gaze to be soft. So you can even start, let's start with this one actually. So take your gaze away from the screen, but with your fingers out in front of you, fingertips out in front of you, start to take your fingers out to the side and see if you can keep looking at both fingers at the same time. So this is a really good exercise if you've been staring at the screen too long. This is a way to engage your peripheral vision. So allowing your gaze to be soft. You can take your arms down and you feel like you've kind of engaged that peripheral vision. Now take an easy breath in up the back of your body, finding some length in your spine. Breathe out down the front, letting it go with a sigh. Breathing up the back of your body, finding length and strength in your back. You breathe out down the front, let it go again, softening around your jaw and your belly. And one more time, so breathing in up the back, length, strength, experience, resilience up the back. Sigh out down the front, compassion, openness, curiosity. Think of someone or something that makes your heart smile. Picture that in your mind's eye and allow that sense of smile to radiate out from you. Now, as you come back towards the screen, find the body position that best suits how you would like to be for this next hour. So something like if you want to be relaxed, maybe you kind of like lean back in your chair a little bit, allow yourself to be soft. If you need a little bit more alertness, feeling a bit tired and unfocused, then maybe you want to bring your body a little bit further forward and a little bit more focus and tone in your body. And if anybody would like to share in the chat what you notice now, is it the way you feel changed at all? Is the way you feel about how you feel changed at all? Yeah, there we go. There you go. Simon, Francis, how was that for you?
Thank you. I don't know if Simon will agree that this is for the best, but I'm now sitting cross-legged, and because Simon likes to stand up and be alert for these recordings, whereas I really like that you've just given me permission to just cross my legs and just be a bit more chilled. So thank you very much for that. It's amazing how quickly one can change, isn't it?
Yeah. My teacher calls this conscious selfishness or conscious laziness. So how, especially as a coach, how little effort can you be putting in to being present with somebody else? So rather than efforting and being forward, which I think we'll talk about perfectionism, so how I am in my perfectionism, lean forward, control, do everything. Can I be a little bit more consciously lazy and a little bit more relaxed in how I am?
Yeah, I find it's beautiful. Interesting how
I'm
sorry, carry on, Francis.
No, go for it. Sorry, I was so relaxed I nearly went off on one already, and you hadn't even shared how you were, so definitely go first.
I was just going to say it's interesting how different it is for me, because I have a sort of sit-stand desk, so the different energy I have from just those different positions. But also we did like a stretch exercise the other day with Chris Kenworthy, and it was really good, and I've taken to doing a little exercise thing before I want to like write something or focus on something. So yeah, I'm really getting into that sort of intentionally movement before creating or trying to be creative, which I've been finding really rewarding. So it was really interesting to sort of do that process out loud, if you see what I mean, with you. So that was really good.
Nice.
Vix, I was reading your self-care. What's
You've frozen a little bit there, Francis.
I think I'm gonna connect to my hotspot.
So Vix, while Francis is just reconnecting, I'm just going to mute you there, Francis, just while you're doing. Oh, maybe there we go. So yeah, while Francis is just fixing her connection, Vix, why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about where you are? Oh yes, you're back.
Sorry, it was hotspot the phone time. Sorry. Just rinse the data. I'm back. Hi, sorry about that. I interrupted you, Simon. Oh, can I just say before, were you just about to ask Vix to tell us all about why she's here?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, because I was just about to say what self-care really means blog post. And and I was reading that and thinking, I don't want to lose the connection that is you're having, and I'm thinking about a podcast that I was on that was Kendra Patterson's about not selfish but selfful, and like I want to ask you later on to talk a bit to that and the difference between self-care and selfish. But yeah, before we go into that, maybe, yes, could you kindly tell us why on earth you've got to where you are?
I wish I had an answer to that. I've got no clue why. I'm assuming that question means a very brief synopsis of my life story and how I got to where I am, as opposed to why. Is that correct?
Either way.
These days, I am an embodiment coach. So I coach other recovering perfectionists and overachievers. I'm particularly interested in this sense of wholeness. I find as an antidote to perfectionism. And so for me, that's a kind of a triumvirate of embodiment, cyclical living, and a practice called authentic relating. These are kind of, for me, the practices that help me remember that I am whole as I am, that I do not need fixing, I am not broken, which I think is a narrative that many people have, particularly perfectionists. Yeah, I guess why I'm here is because you guys invited me. I love talking about this stuff. Yeah, I guess since I really identified since I really became aware that this was my pattern and really started seeing it everywhere else, I have not been able to stop talking about it. And funnily enough, having spent years thinking that I was the only one, and everybody else had their lives sorted, and I was the only one who's still trying to figure this out. It's my utter surprise and delight to discover there's a whole bunch of other recovering perfectionists out there, and talking about this stuff is really helpful. So, yeah, let's talk about it.
How important is it to you to kind of be a bit of a torchlight, a bit of a caller outer of perfectionism for those who think that they're alone? How important is it for you to kind of educate the world that there's many of you, or where you were?
Oh, how important to educate? I think it's more that you were talking earlier about like you really enjoying that place of taking somebody from problem unaware to problem aware and having that light bulb moment. I love creating that for people when they have this sense of like, oh well, it's not just me. And like I watch people's shoulders drop, and all of this tension that people have been carrying, that I've carried for a really long time. This like story of, look at everybody else. And it looks like everybody else has got it sorted. Everybody else's Instagram account looks brilliant, and it's just me like here in the background going, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing, and trying to look like I am. That sense of kind of camaraderie and togetherness that comes from those moments of realizing it's not just me, that the experience that I'm having is an innately human one. There's nothing wrong with the experience that I'm having, and it's important for me personally. That gives me a lot of reassurance and relief, and yeah, I think delight is a sense of kind of like joyful playfulness that comes up when I see that for other people. Yeah, it feels like it's a big part of the medicine for this particular struggle that many of us have.
And when I asked you to tell us a little bit about why you're here, I would like for you to tell us a bit about the narrative, the story of kind of what you were doing, and how it came to be that you've decided that overcoming perfectionism was an important thing for you to tackle in your life.
Yeah, so the nutshell version of that narrative is I was in the military for 10 years. Did that for all of my 20s, left when I was in my early 30s, decided I wasn't quite done with conflict zones, so spent a few years working in the international development sector, burnt myself out, And a lot of the patterns that I think had worked for me in the very specific context of the military didn't work outside. And I made myself really ill for a while. And so my coaching journey, like I imagine many people's are, was really focused on like trying to heal myself first. And that led me into, I mentioned authentic relating. I trained as an embodied facilitator. I trained as a yoga teacher. I was really, again, this is a very common pattern, I think. I was on the hunt for the answer. Somewhere out there was a key that if only I worked hard enough, I could unlock all of the struggle that I was having. It would all disappear and I would suddenly have the answer to the universe. And increasingly, particularly through embodied practice, I realized that that was not going to be the case, much to my disappointment. But then doing some work last year, I took a year off last year from training. The first time since I left full-time employment, I was not engaged in somebody else's training course. And it was, it was wonderful. I suddenly realized that really interesting. So by doing all this training all of the time, I had constantly kept myself in a state of being a beginner, of learning something new, of being a novice, and therefore not being very good at things, and therefore feeling like I wasn't very good at things, because in a way I wasn't. I was learning. And I took a year off last year to integrate, and it was so pleasurable to start to build my confidence and start to like actually be like, oh, wow, I can do something. Actually giving myself time to like practice and integrate and embody it. But I also did a mastermind with one of my somatic mentors, and I was doing a lot of, I had this big thing for the year that I wanted to build a boat. So I know you guys come across Tad Hargrave and his analogy that, you know, you want to build a boat to take people from island A to island B. Except what a lot of us do is we collect planks. So I had authentic relating, and I had cyclical living, and I had yoga and Reiki and embodied coaching and emotional intelligence coaching and all of this stuff. But I was like, I want to build a boat. I want to have a sense of like I had all of these parts fit together, and it was doing some work around that I suddenly realized I can't even remember quite how it clicked. Just over the course of a couple of months, it was like, oh, of course it's perfectionism. That's my thing. Like that's, you know, if I had to boil so many of my wounds and struggles down into one little container, it's perfectionism. And I realized one day in conversation with somebody that I was my own ideal client, that the journey that I have been on, the journey that I'm still on, is the work that I want to do with other people. And it's going to be horribly non-operational. It felt right. Like something clicked inside me, and it was like, of course it's this. It's been there all along. I even remember at one point like criticizing myself, being like, why did I not think of this earlier? And of course, I wasn't ready earlier, but like this sense of like, this has been inside me the whole time. Of course it's this. And the ease of which things are now, like my creative process, my writing, the way I connect with people, like, yeah. So it turns out that I was kind of right. There was a key, but it wasn't quite they didn't fix me in the way that I thought it was going to.
I love that. I love that you needed to step away to see the links.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a few elephants in the room in the coaching industry that we've started to see. The one obvious one that kicked this whole thing off was that there were lots of people coming out of all these training schools as coaches and not really being held and supported in building businesses, and sort of left feeling that, well, they were qualified and therefore, or they'd had all this life experience and wanted to call themselves coaches, but didn't know where to go from there. And the other one that sort of has come up in the last few months is it's almost as if coaches are not invited to lace together the various bits of their lives. So, you know, you're a coach, no one is talking to you about how you might be having to balance that with other work. And no one's inviting you to celebrate the connection between what might seemingly be unrelated and other type of work, or, you know, if you're studying, how that might be feeding into it. When in fact, as you say, it's about seeing all of the things in relation to each other, and then working out what the common threads are that
Yeah.
is the light bulb moment that then makes you feel a lot more confident and not just like a continued learner or balancer of loads of things. It's actually like, how can you repackage your life as it is and then start to celebrate for yourself and out loud what it is that you see as being the commonality and how you can therefore help other people. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it took me a few goes at that. Like, I'd had a couple of previous attempts at kind of like drawing those threads together with various parts of my work. I think like lots of coaches, I was also doing quite a bit of consultancy work, and you know, I was diversity and inclusion work, and I was training aid workers before they went to conflict zones. Like, how does all of this? And the truth that I was not willing to admit for a long time was that the thing that was common to all of those different activities and all of those different interests was me. And, you know, I was trying to kind of like, well, I have to have this like professional brand front. I have to have a name that isn't mine. And, you know, really trying to hide myself. I've come into kind of coaching a little bit through a tech startup incubator. And the idea of like just being me as a solo kind of entrepreneur, solo coach, I was like, well, that's not big enough. That's not impressive enough. I have to have people think that there's me and this like whole team of coaches that are just around the corner or something. And it was, I think something clicked for me last year in realizing that actually that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to build a big business where I was managing lots of other people. Like it is me, and all of those threads, all of those different things that I'm interested in doing, they all lead back to me. And I couldn't tell the story of what I wanted to share with people without putting myself in the middle of it.
Yeah, and another thing that happens is coaches often talk about themselves in the third person on their websites, and that's fine, I quite understand, but I can't help but pick them up on it. And they say, we do this, and it's like, well, is it, or is it you? Because can we talk about why are you, you know, why is this a we for you, unless it's the royal we? But it's that thing of like, I'm not good enough. You have to think of me as like a company of many people in order for me to be credible to you. That's the implicit sort of message coming across, which smells of a lack of confidence already. So as soon as the person reading the website realizes that actually who they're dealing with is one person, I think there's an unconscious question as to why on earth that person couldn't just show up as themselves, as this company of one, as Carlos says. But is that a perfectionist thing? Do you feel like, you know, there's a connection between, because we're not perfect, we can't show up as one person because people will therefore know that there are going to be flaws, because it's just us?
Yeah, I think so. I really subscribe to, like, Brene Brown's got a beautiful quote about perfectionism being this 20-ton shield that we think is going to protect us. You know, so it's a defensive move. It's a survival strategy for whatever reason, and it could be big T trauma, it could be little T trauma, it could just be, you know, not even, it doesn't have to be traumatic, but at some point we've kind of internalized the message that how we are isn't quite enough. It's not quite right. And so perfectionism is a shield that we use to defend ourselves. But as she puts it, all it really achieves is it means that we stop ourselves being seen. You know, we numb out first to our own experience. Like, it's hard to feel those feelings, so we numb out, we disassociate, we spend all our lives intellectualizing and analyzing. You know, you said earlier, lots of perfectionists, I think, really live in the head, and a lot of perfectionists are smart people, you know. And this body stuff is like messy and complicated, and we're not really taught how to do it, how to be with it well. So yeah, I think that at its heart, perfectionism is really I don't know if something as cliched as like a self-worth issue. It sounds so bland, but I think there is this sense of I'm not quite good enough, so I need to control, I need to manipulate, I need to put forward this image that I've got everything under control in order to feel like I can be loved and accepted, and that people will buy my services.
Big stuff.
Yeah.
This is the core of it for me. I'm loving this because, as I've shared with you, Vix, I'm all about the cerebral intellectualization of the feels, and I know enough about all this work that the embodiment work is important, and I know that there's a disconnect for me, and I think that being people helpers, we're all wanting so much to be in connection with all this work, and to be doing it and striving to do as best as we can because we want to help others. So we're acutely aware of any shortcomings that we have. And as you say, being perfectionists, I'm like, must get the embodiment work done. That's another thing I've got to get right. Must come away from the intellectualization of it all because I'm not perfect. If I only do that work, I must have touched on all of the different ways of understanding yourself. Otherwise, I can't possibly show up with authenticity and say that I know myself.
Yeah, exactly. And what I really felt as you were talking there, Francis, was like the striving and this kind of like, I really felt in my body this kind of like upwards and forwards kind of energy, and it's like a little bit kind of like anxious and controlling. And I have to do like a very high energy, right? This kind of like hyper arousal state and like wanting to keep going. Whereas, I mean, what I've learned, particularly through the embodiment work, actually is noticing that pattern and realizing that I don't have to try so hard. And actually, I really discovered in my coaching recently, the more I take this approach of conscious laziness, the more I lean into holding space without holding space. So, one of my teachers, Rick Smith, talks about this. When somebody's like trying to prove that they're listening, and like they're really in. Yeah. And like you feel it. I feel it in my body. It's like, oh my god, I can't quite breathe. Oh, then like actually, what I then up as a client is I then have to start performing to be the best client I can be. I actually had this with my supervisor today, like tracking this pattern of like, oh God, I've stepped into I must be the best client I can be, and therefore I must coach myself through this supervision session. Amazing. Not letting her do her job. So the opposite is to allow the space to hold both of you. And so the embodiment of that is a little bit further back. It's a little bit more settled. It's a little bit more relaxed. It's not so backwards that you're kind of like, like, yeah, whatever. You deal with your own problems, mate. There's a sort of sense of, you ever watch a goalkeeper, like a professional goalkeeper? Yeah, where they're alert and like on the balls of their feet and able to move in whatever direction the ball is coming next. There's a real fluidity and a grace to it. That's increasingly where I'm learning, practicing being, and it's just, perfectionism got me a really long way in life. So this is where I often start with people, and I can see some chat around, where perfectionism might come from, and I almost don't care. Like, I'm not a therapist. Like, my job is not to unpick that story for people because it will be different for everybody. What I care about is that at some point you develop this strategy, you develop this pattern, this embodiment, because it's kept you safe. And so I love starting with this place of how can we show that's some gratitude? Like, what are all of the things that perfectionism allows you to do? And whether it's a behavior or an identity, but yeah, how does that pattern serve you? And you know what? I've done pretty well in life up to this point. 2 degrees, couple of careers, like I was doing okay as with this kind of perfectionist tendency. What I started to realize though was the ways that it was holding me back, and that if it was the only thing that I could do, it was leading me to burnout again. I felt like I was missing something when I was always like on upwards and forwards. I didn't have a lot of fun. Like I'm a very serious perfectionist. Whereas so what I wanted to be able to do was not necessarily get rid of that. There are times where that's really useful, that ability to strive and to push myself and those kind of qualities. But I want more choice. I want to be able to do something else as well. So we build awareness of the pattern, have some gratitude for it, and then start to build range, start to build an ability to do something else as well. And that gives people choice.
I love the idea of choices also being, because what you're really making me think about is the unknown. And it's funny what you said. I think you're absolutely right to call out that everyone in the chat immediately, and they're all friends of ours, so we can say this, you know, are going to sort of theorizing why where did this come from? And that's totally me. Like, I'll go down the psychotherapy route all day effing long to try and work it all out. And it's because none of us want there to be an unknown around why on earth we are this way, because that's so uncomfortable. And just being able to accept it, and as Chris says, it's just another pesky guest at my mental dinner party. Brilliant. It's like, well, fucking they're here, God knows who invited them, or like how they got in the door.
One step further, and that it's not a pesky guest. Like, this is, you know, if you look at the Rumi poem, the guest house, like, actually the real art of this is like, can you welcome that guest just as much as you welcome the kind of the shiny happy guest, or the, you know, the fun playful one. It's like all of these parts, all of these patterns that we have get a seat at the table, because they all make up who you are. And I see, it drives me nuts when I see people talking about overcome your perfectionism, or, you know, there are lots around the new year, people like, leave your perfectionism behind in 2021. Like, it was just something I was carrying around in my handbag unnecessarily, just like, oh my God, I can hear my voice like straining here. It gets me so angry, because it's not only is it not that easy, like, if I could figure out how to leave it behind, I bloody would have done already, because I'm a perfectionist. And I would have,
yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. You've just called something out that I've never named before, and I'm really, really grateful to you for it. I also find a lot of the coaching crap that goes out on social media really annoying, because it reduces in this kind of really patronizing way some really complex concerns to you. All you need to do is just this, or like, oh, did you realize that this? And it's like, I mean, do you think I'm an idiot? Like, do you think that me reading this and you just saying that stuff is going to change my life? And this morning I was triggered by something that Lawrence posted around some stupid day today that's called Blue Monday or something. And I really hate all the names for all these, which are, you know, as Simon and I would say, just toxic marketing bullshit designed like Black Friday to get people to buy more stuff. But also I find it really triggering, because it kind of makes people, it brands stuff and makes people feel that they need to fit in. Like, I really hate New Year's resolutions. I find Christmas and holidays really triggering, because I don't like being told I need to stop working for a certain amount of time just because. And for the same reason, I find the whole New Year's resolution thing really annoying, because like you, I just don't think it's possible. If it were possible to just flip between one state of being and another without there being any work or a journey to be enjoyed, we'd all have done it. And also, like, thank God we can't all just do that. It must be traumatizing to just move from one state to another so quickly. So,
and I think, you know, coming back to like the perfectionism thing particularly, it's, well, any of these patterns, I think the underlying assumption is that it's wrong. Like, if you're perfectionist, you're broken. And if you can only, you know, get rid of that broken limb and leave it behind, fix it some way, then you'll be a perfect person. Then you will be worthy to be a human being. And like, that's the toxic story in this. And so, yeah, increasingly where I'm trying to come from is, it's not about the thing, it's about your relationship to the thing. So it's not really about the perfectionism, it's about our relationship to it. And if we can come into something that's more compassionate and more accepting, that makes more space for it, the same way you were just talking about Christmas, and there is no right way to do that. Do I believe that, like, everybody needs a winter? Yes. Like, we're designed to pause, we're designed to be cyclical. And for lots of people in the Northern Hemisphere, winter makes a lot of sense to do that. That's what's happening in nature. I'm very glad that I'm not back in London at the moment with the short days, and you know, we naturally want to hibernate. But
well, that's why I wasn't happy, because I'm very, very cyclical. Obviously as a woman, but also like the whole concept of, as you say, you know, being able to undulate in and out of different states and sort of ritualistically respect them is really important to me. So not having, with two little children, everyone at home having COVID, the opportunity to do any of that hibernation was deeply frustrating. Because my childcare was ripped from me. So every moment that I should have been hibernating, I couldn't have. And that was just really difficult. So just to your point, basically.
No, I feel you in that. And that, like, everybody's different.
You know, Chris, shut up. I'll talk about it as much as I need to, all right? Literally ranting about Christmas for the entire year until next Christmas.
It's kind of miserable.
Simon is always so politely waiting to say anything and always has something wonderful to say. Would you like to share anything at this juncture, Simon?
Yeah, I think it really resonated me when you were saying about this sort of needing to overcome the negative in perfectionism. And I think I really am drawn towards that sort of at least acknowledging it and then either being able to work with it or maybe identifying, you know, as Brené Brown was your Brené Brown quote, what's stopping you from being seen, or, you know, is something holding you back? And I think sometimes there is that element of needing to just look at it in a different way and think like, oh yeah, actually, do you know what? That is me. I am doing this. I wonder if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And I think sometimes it is uncomfortable when the answer to that is, well, it's you. You know, there's that when the problem is that it's you, then that's quite personal. Whereas if it's like, oh well, because of external factor A, this has happened, it's easy to just blame external factor A. But when you say to someone, okay, well, is there something about your sort of approach to this, your viewpoint, your preconception of it, and then the deeper you dig and it comes out, it's like, oh, actually, yeah, do you know what? I think I might be a perfectionist. It's like, that's, you know, and I think it's really inspiring that you're then working with people to either say, okay, can we build on that? Can we use this in a positive way? And I think that's a really interesting story that I don't hear very often. As I think you've said, I just hear a lot of that. Why don't you cut that limb off and hobble along without it type thing, which doesn't really seem like a very good solution to me.
No, me neither. And it's interesting thinking about kind of like personal responsibility, because that is hard for people. One of my teachers likes to say, it's not your fault. Whatever happened to you in your life, like it's not your fault. You know, it is your responsibility as an adult. You know, you do have, well, you can learn how to have choice. So, you know, like I wouldn't say that everybody has choice automatically, because if this is the only way that you've learned how to be, then it's almost impossible to be a different way, to have a different embodiment. You have to learn something different. You have to, you know, have tools and have range and support developing that range in order to be able to actually have a choice and to be able to do something different.
We've got a couple of questions in the chat that I want to ask about, and also I'm going to add my own question, which is to what degree do you relate embodiment to consciousness? Because you just talked about embodying choice. And I'm wondering, because when you said, you know, you may not have had the privilege of being in a place where choice is apparent to you, and I don't remember quite how you said it, but it was almost like choice is down to a consciousness of options, and you talk about embodying it. So that's what took me to, like, what's the connection between an embodiment of something and a consciousness of something? But I don't know if I want to.
I can answer that quite quickly if you want.
Yeah, please.
So awareness and choice, I would say, are two different things. You need awareness in order to have choice. But awareness would be like knowing that France exists, knowing that French people speak French, knowing what the Eiffel Tower looks like, things like that. Embodying something, and the journey from like being aware of France might be you then learn to speak French, maybe you spend time in France, but the embodiment of being French is very different to knowing that France exists.
Mm.
And that's the journey. And, you know, so like if you are French, then you've been born with that, like you naturally have that kind of embodiment of, and we all, you know, like there's an embodiment of being British, and it normally involves a cue, or saying sorry, you know. And like if you've traveled anywhere in the world, like you see the kind of, and I'm not talking about the kind of the gross like national stereotypes, but there is a different flavor of people in different parts of the world. And so the kind of the embodiment journey is learning how, first noticing, so the awareness, the consciousness that those other ways of being exist, and then these like layers and layers of deepening how that essence lives in your body. So, you know, when I first started doing authentic relating, I became aware that there was a different way to communicate, that I could actually talk about my feelings in this way that welcomed them, had ownership of them. 4 years on, I'm probably only just really starting to embody that more times in my day than I'm not. And you know what? It goes completely out the window when I'm having an argument with my husband and I'm triggered. You know, because like my brain defaults to what it used to know, so the thing that was easiest, and this new thing is still new. I'm still like learning to embody it, and maybe one day when I'm ancient, I finally will do. So that's the thing.
No, I love that, and you're making me think, with the greatest of respect for my father, his way and that side of my family is all like, right, action stations, let's sort this out, you know. And there's this like bit of me that's very I have this deeply emotional connection with what's happening on one level, but actually the way I sort of brace myself, like you're talking about the British thing, and just sort of like doing something. There's a line in a book called Mansfield Park by Jane Austen, and there's a character called Mrs. Norris, and I love this line. It's something like, Mrs. Norris didn't mind what was happening as long as something was. You know, it's kind of like something's got to be done. We can't possibly do nothing in this situation. Yeah. Something must be resolved, and I've got to resolve it.
Yeah. You know what? That was the exact advice my dad gave me when I went on operations with the Air Force for the first time. It was like, you're an officer. If in doubt, do something. And you
do nothing. Whatever you do, don't do nothing.
The worst thing you can do is do nothing. Whereas, I'm like, and I'm not and I'm not shaming that way of being. Like that can be incredibly useful. And I know lots of people who don't have that embodiment at all. And when something is going wrong, like they're almost frozen. There, it's like no sense of like being able to do anything in those moments. So that can be really useful. And it's also useful to be able to do other things, be able to embody a different way of being. Not because, you know, I think Sam said earlier, like whether it's good or bad, right or wrong. What is appropriate? Like what is authentic to me in this moment, and what is appropriate to the situation I'm in? So how can I be responsive and sensitive to my needs and the world around me, and choose something that feels that like it honors self and it honors other. That's what I think about.
This is such good work that needs to be done, Vix. I love everything that you're all about. It brings us to neatly onto the first question from Carlos, because for me, I think I don't think that was particularly militant. Well, I do sometimes, but you know, that sort of needing to do something thing. I think brings us nicely onto the first question, which is, what's the relationship between perfectionism and our relationship with uncertainty? And I think it's the uncertainty that propels us to act, because we just don't like sitting in any kind of uncertainty at all. So let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk from my experience of this. So I notice this particularly around other people's expectations of me. So if I turn up to something and I don't understand what somebody's expectations are, it gets me into a real headspin, because I don't know how to be good enough. Like if things are uncertain and I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know which bit of my armory to kind of pull out. I don't know how to be good enough because I don't know what the rules are. I don't know what's happening. And therefore the answer for me is try harder. Like do more, keep working until I fix it. because, and I noticed the underlying assumption there is that that there's an answer to everything, and if only I work hard enough, I'll figure it out. It's a story that I have, and that it must be my responsibility to sort this out, whether for myself or for other people. But there's a sense of like, I need to be able to figure this. I need to be able to figure this out. And it's a safety thing, right? You know, I mean, and I might say, like, no human beings like uncertainty. You know, there's our nervous system. I've heard this recently. Our nervous systems are primed for safety, and our souls are primed for growth. But there's something deep on a physiological level in our nervous systems that requires safety, that requires certainty, familiarity. It's like why changing habits is so difficult, even if they're not helpful for us, because they're familiar to our systems, and that creates a feeling of safety. So yeah, and I think for a perfectionist, not only is there the kind of the unsafety that comes with uncertainty generally, but then there's this added layer because like now I don't know how to be good enough in this situation. So yeah, Carlos, I'd be curious if there's anything that anything that you want to reflect back on there. But that's my take.
I love that. Our nervous systems are primed for safety, and our souls are primed for growth. And I guess there's the conflict there between the two things that we will always have to be living out, because how can we be safe and be growing or changing or moving forward? You know, we're always going to have to venture out, and so our safety will be to some degree compromised.
So I'm going to reframe that as, rather than a conflict, as a yes and. So one of my teachers, Rick, talks about this as being on our tender edge. So how can I be up against my edge and like pushing the edges of my comfort zone whilst keeping one foot in safety? How do I stay resourced? And that's normally through what we kind of call calibration or titration, and that's going slow. So rather than, this is my pattern again, what I tend to do is like, there's an edge, there's something for me to learn, and I am off full barrel, no stop, right over the edge, all in. Whereas actually a much kinder way to my system is to go slow and to resource myself and do a little bit and then integrate, and then a little bit more and integrate. And like, by going slow, we get to go further because we don't have to go back. We don't have that kind of slingshot effect, the elastic band where I've overstretched myself way past my edge and I've bounced back and I need to recover for like 3 weeks after something. So yeah, this idea of being on the tender edge,
like
being gentle with ourselves.
So do you tend to try to avoid intensity of anything just because it feels?
No, I love
it's
intensity.
Not the slow choice.
No, I love intensity, but I'm really mindful about how resourced I am. How much intensity can my system cope with? So if anybody's into polyvagal theory, you'll be aware of like the window of tolerance. So like how much space, how much capacity does my nervous system have to respond to something before I'm going into either hyper arousal and then hypo arousal. And there are sometimes like particular points of my menstrual cycle, I'm sleeping really well, my diet's good, I've been exercising well, I've had lots of like nourishing social contact, lots of times in nature. I am fucking unstoppable. Like I can take on anything and the world is my oyster and bring it all on. There are other times where like, you know, my husband comes home and looks at me wrong and I'm like in tears and the entire thing's like out the window. So it's coming back to this, you know, the kind of mindfulness, the awareness of how much resourcing do I need right now? How much can my system cope with? And making choices based on that. So yes, sometimes intensity, other times, God no.
Perfect. Such a great perfect. Where the fuck did that come from? Wow, so Freudian. Just gave you what I thought was the biggest compliment, which is a shameful bit of reflection from me. You are not perfect. Well done. But I'm very moved by what you're saying. For example, if you're coming into autumn and you know your period's a week away, being conscious that what you're going to do if you're 41 and know yourself relatively well, even though the pain in the arse about periods is that you have them all your life and they always take you by surprise, don't they? Every single month. and you're like, damn it, I just thought I'd work myself out. But I think on an unconscious level, and I hope the people here for whom menstruation is not a like personal feature in their lives can still relate in some way. You're coming into autumn, even on an unconscious level, what you're going to be doing is thinking, I need to resource. I'll be needing to fuel up because I'm not going to necessarily be in a good place in a week's time if I'm fighting all the fires and things are too exciting. But thank you for reminding me that you absolutely could be in an all guns blazing situation in 2 weeks' time with it, and so I still don't quite know how we're all supposed to, this is the problem with, I'm looking for, there was a great book that you might know called Wild Power.
Yeah.
Okay, so that bit in the book where they're sort of saying, what we're waiting for is a Google plugin for our calendar that lets people see when we're menstruating and for it to be perfectly fine and completely socially acceptable to just not be booking in meetings for 3 days for someone in a month because it's just not a good time for them to have meetings. So that'd be fine,
Yeah, I would love that, and I'd love that beyond just the kind of like the obvious things of the menstrual cycle, because Chris said, like everybody has cycles, whether it's the circadian rhythm, the menstrual cycle. Some people feel the moon cycle more clearly, but it could even just be like a project cycle. Like everything has this rhythm, and so there is a sense of everything kind of having a right time. It's like right time for everything, but it's also, so this is the other little gotcha for recovering perfectionists. Of this is then not meant to be. This is then not telling you how to live your life. Like it's a guide. It's an archetype for you to be able to reflect back and go, how do I feel? What do I need right now? Because like as a coach, I have clients. Like there's plenty of times when I end up like working through my period, and so it's not about can I have the perfect period. Like occasionally I like to do that, but it's like, oh, okay, so how am I at this time? How am I today? How am I right now? How can I support myself more? How can I work with this energy 1% more rather than working against it? So
I want to link what Chris is saying to what Carlos is saying. I mean, the whole point of saying I hope that some of you for whom menstruation isn't a thing can relate to this is because I 100% understand that you guys have got mood cycles as well. And I'll always say that I think it's a lot harder for people who aren't menstruating to kind of get a relationship with what their cycles are, because, at least we can kind of track our periods and know that we might have an average length of time in our cycles. But for people for whom that's not a thing, who have to respect that there are mood cycles out there and have to kind of somehow work out what theirs are or when they come. I mean, we've got Craig here, who's a kind of lunar cycle expert and all the rest of it. I don't know, Simon, if you've got any thoughts at this juncture, maybe you can stop us just having a little old menstruation rant.
I think it's important to sort of recognise when you're at your best, when you feel you're at your best, and when you feel you're maybe lacking in something. And I think sometimes that lines up with something, and I think if that helps you make sense of it or plan it a bit more, then that's helpful. But I think looking to try and align it with something just to give it some meaning is potentially the other end of that scale. But I certainly noticed that I always describe myself as solar powered. So if the sun's out, I've got energy. Like the winter for me is not an energy time. I don't do very well in the, late winters, early nights and all this sort of stuff. It's just not where my energy lies. In the summer, I'm full of beans and have lots of energy. It's just part of what I notice for me. But that's taken many years of realising that's just how it works for me personally, whereas other people I know absolutely hate the summer and struggle in the heat and love hunkering down in the winter and getting on with stuff. So I think it's about, I think, just working out when you feel energized and leaning into that. And I agree with that thing of setting boundaries of when people can and can't get access to your best and let's not use the word worse self, but you know what I mean, lower self if you're on the ladder of how well you're doing, if you know what I mean, and if you can set a boundary to say, do you know what, in the afternoons I'm just not as ready for contact and meetings and sessions. So I'm not going to book them in the afternoons. I'm going to do it all in the morning when I've got the energy for that. Even if it's as simple as that, I think that can really sort of help, especially if you're planning out your day or your sessions particularly.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Chris. And it's simple. It's not always easy, and I'm always surprised at actually how much control I have over that myself. Like even as a freelancer, there's a pressure to say yes to everything. Of course there is, but I mean, this is a very rare exception for me. I normally don't do calls on Mondays. Like it's a day where I don't want to be talking to other people. It's my day. I do all my content batching today. I sit down, I write my newsletter, and I get all of my content done for social media for the week, because then I don't have to worry about it. And when people ask, can we do a call on Monday? I just say no. I'm busy. You want to do Tuesday? And it's amazingly simple, and it works. Like most people are like, okay, let's do Tuesday then.
This reminds me of the work that we're doing to get people to pivot from thinking about what they should be doing and then burning out doing what they should be doing, to thinking about what kinds of putting themselves out there are another, as Carlos says, another fucking self-growth tool. Because in really drilling down on, for example, what day is a good day to do content, or not working with everyone just because they're prepared to pay you, and working out actually what kind of people are going to nourish you back, getting to a more confident place with pricing your services so that you can do less work if you like more time, or understanding actually that you do like to be busy all the time. And if there's lots of vacuums in your time, you end up feeling more stressed, because, for some of us, the lack of routine and having long lie-ins is actually quite stressful, because then you've got more like opportunity for existential thought, which can be really annoying or whatever. But it's like, get to know yourself and then create the work around you so that you can do this for a long time and sort of die feeling like you've sort of satisfied yourself in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just, I guess, two little caveats that I would put on that. Is one, that we're always changing. Like on a deeply cellular level, like the people who we are as we go to bed tonight are not the same people that as we got up in the morning. So we're constantly changing. And so there's an invitation that something that worked for you like 5 years ago might not work anymore. And that's okay. Like doesn't have to prompt an existential crisis. You're allowed to change and you're allowed to do things differently. And the other one is this idea that the body doesn't lie. So the sense that, like, the embodied wisdom is always right. I think the body doesn't lie unless it's like playing out an old trauma pattern that it doesn't realize. So there's always a truth. So I heard you say like some people kind of have this sense of like needing to be busy in order not to be stressed. I would question that. So there'll be some truth in that. And I don't think it's like the full picture, because it's coming back to the sense of what feels familiar and therefore comfortable is being busy and on the go all the time, and slowing down and being a little bit slower, having a bit more time and space. Exactly as Carlos is saying, is like all those pesky emotions start to crop up and need dealing with, and it's much easier to be busy and ignore them. So there is
connected to that action stations thing as well, isn't it? Like better to do something than nothing, because then you'll feel like you've achieved something, right?
Exactly. So there's some discernment, I think, that needs to happen here about how we listen to our bodies and discern kind of, it's like the difference between eating for your taste buds as opposed to eating for your for your nutrition. Like our taste buds are terrible. Like they'll take like sugar, salt, and fat over anything that looks like a vegetable every single time. It doesn't mean that's actually good for us.
That's right. And it's like it's almost like we are our own children. I'm thinking about my son. If he'd have baby Chino all day long if you gave him the choice. But we have to say, no, you need to eat actual food, because it's got some stuff in it which you need. And I feel like we're our own children. We're all trying to on the one hand have baby Chino all day long, but on the other hand we do need to feed ourselves something nourishing, and the older we get, the better we know what that is, I guess.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I think like that's the journey, right? Like we're it's a lifelong practice of like trying to figure actually what is the thing that nourishes us better in this particular moment on this particular day. What is it that we...
Yeah, you know what? I think Carlos has got a good point here, which is, again, I love, what did you call it before, calling out, you used a phrase for calling out perfection. I have to look back on the recording. I liked it. You said, here's another something or other around
it's sneaky. Perfectionism is sneaky. Like every time I think I've kind of like got a little bit of a grip on it, it's like whack-a-mole, and it like creeps up on me again, and it like
exactly. And
like, oh God, how am I being perfectionist about this?
I know. I just thought I had it like 2 seconds ago, and I was like, oh, we're all growing up. And then Carlos is like, oh bugger, I've got to be an adult. It's like, wait, you're right. I don't want to be an adult all the time, because if I think I'm rocking it because I know what nutrition I need to give to myself, then I can just be good all the time forever. And it's like, well, that doesn't feel really good either. I don't want to be an adult all the time.
Both and like we can embrace this sort of sense of responsibility and adultness and still embrace like the parts of us that want to just have baby Chino all day.
So here's where the ethics, this is the bit where your self-care, what self-care really means blog post comes into it, because I think what we're talking about is ethics. I think there is an inherent sense that you can't have it all. It's wrong. So how do you talk about that in the spirit of giving yourself permission and sort of the and not the but thing,
Yeah. Oh God, there was I found a really good quote that really summed this up a bit. I now can't remember at the top of that blog post, that I thought articulated this really nicely. But I think it's just a sense of I can't show up for anybody else if I'm not tuned in and connected to myself first. So if I'm in any kind of stress response, stress makes us less smart, less creative, and less kind. So if I'm like riding on stress, I'm not connected. I can't be there for somebody else. I can't be creative and like come up with innovative solutions to problems. I'd like physiologically, neurologically, our brains don't work like that. So there is something about the best thing, like the first thing I can do for anybody else is to be like taking care of myself. And if I can show up with table, yes, exactly, yes, thank you, the Bill Crawford quote. Yeah, if I'm resourcing myself and I'm regulating my nervous system, if I'm being kind to myself and I'm nourished and full and all the rest of it, then that's the only thing that enables me to do that for other people. Like this idea that we can just keep giving. And there are so many cliches around this, around oxygen masks and full glasses and all the rest of it. But they're cliches because there is like a kernel of truth in all of that, right? But just very much.
I love some people here know that I love a Venn diagram. And I think what's tricky is that if it was just stuff that was self-care and stuff that was selfish, it would be fine. But there's this middle bit, which is the grey area, where I don't know if for perfectionists it involves us knowing that we might let people down, or not.
So I've got an example of this actually that happened on Friday. So my husband was having a really hard day, and I had plans. I had quite a few coaching clients, and I had plans to go out with a friend for lunch. And my husband, in his kind of state of upset, said, "Can you not go?" And I was like, oh God, I've not seen anybody all week. I've been working really hard. I really want to see this friend. And I found myself really caught between the sense of like, how do I honor what I need right now, which is to go and have lunch with my friend? And how do I honor what he needs, which is for me to stay here and to be with him? And what that brings up for me, what that triggers in me, is all of my stories of I'm not good enough. Like, I'm a bad wife. I'm a bad person if I don't attend to my partner's needs. But but then I have that kind of, I'm selfish, and I'm like, oh, but like I know I need this. I know I need this kind of social resourcing. It'd be really good for me to go and spend some time with a friend. I'll come back more resourced and be able to support him better. And the way we got through this, it's revolutionary. None of you will have thought about this before, I'm sure. Is we talked about it, and I was able to kind of notice. So first I noticed that, wow, I've got all of these stories going on in my head that I'm feeling conflicted. Like, I want to be here for you, and I want this, and I do feel conflicted, and all these stories going on. So noticing the assumptions, starting to reveal that, and like, oh, how can I start to take some ownership of this? Like, what here is like my stuff, and what's important to me here? Like, why is it that I want to go and see this friend? Like, how do I think that's going to affect? What's important to him? What is it that he's really needing right now? And then rather than this kind of, so binary thinking, I think is always a hallmark of perfectionism. It's either or, black or white. And it's like, okay, what is the yes and? So you need to feel safe, reassured. You want some time together. I need like time with my friend. I need to get out of the house. I need to do something different. Okay, how can we do both of those things? And actually, just in having that conversation helped my husband recognize what he needed today. And he was like, actually, you know what? Go and have lunch with your friend. We've got all day tomorrow, and that. I feel, basically he said, I feel heard, like you recognize what I needed, you're prepared to do something different, now I feel good, please go and enjoy your lunch with your friend.
That's beautiful. I love that. I wish I could apply it to my 4-year-old who this morning was screaming at me at the nursery door to say, Mummy, I need to go, I want to go home. And I was thinking, no, I need to go to Barry's boot camp, and then I want to have a lovely day with no one. So I was at that horrible place of like, I have to communicate to you that you can't come home, and it's because I've got to do stuff for me. It's harder when it's children, but I like that it's provided an opportunity for us to have a deeper conversation about what it means for me to do what I need to do, for him to be able to be independent. He's 4, but I'll put that into words that are appropriate for him. And it might be a conversation that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So all of these things are gifts, aren't they? They're opportunities that are gifts for us to have better conversations for people.
Yeah, the conflict is often a gateway into deeper intimacy. It's not about, I mean, I imagine like your son goes to nursery like most days, right, and doesn't want to come home. So there's an opportunity there, like, well, what's happening for you right now? Like, what is the underlying need? Because most of us communicate in this comes to non-violent communication. Most of us communicate in strategies. So we'll say, I need this, right? I need to go and have lunch with my friend. Well, that's not actually true. Like, my underlying need is my desire is like, I want to feel valued. I want to be around a different person's energy. There's all these other things that are going on, and there's lots of ways that I can get those needs met. It doesn't have to be this like one strategy. And by kind of getting underneath, so rather than like skipping across the lily pad as quickly as possible, can I slow down and drop between the lily pads and drop underneath? Like, what is actually happening underneath? And how might I start to get those needs met in different ways? How might that be happening for the person that I'm in connection with?
It's the choice thing again. And as Carlos said, there's so many different strategies available. And we feel the same. Sorry to bring us back to marketing. But it's like, yes, there's loads of things that you could be doing. And it's a minefield. And that choice thing of like, well, which one? Someone tell me, what am I supposed to be doing? And it's like, well, this is the work. It's working out which is going to be most serving to you and why. People are like, which social media platform? It's like, there's no answer. What's behind the question? Are you asking like about, so it's something to do with, it's kind of unpicking what any of these things mean to you and why then interacting with them as a strategy or as a way forward is going to give you a sense of ownership and give you a sense of having made a good choice for yourself.
Yeah. I know. Okay, Carlos is right. Of course, there's no such thing as a perfect strategy. No. There's not even like a strategy that's perfect for you, because things change again, right?
Yeah.
So well, at least the approach I try to take for everything, including my marketing, is to experiment and to try and to follow what gives me the best feelings in my body. Like, what are the things that have me feeling like stressed and uptight and anxious and worried? I'm like, okay, I'm going to do less of those. And like, what are the things that have me like feeling a little bit more, even if it's like 1% like more relaxed and 1% more kind of confident. So this is why I batch my content on a Monday, because cause it works for me. If I don't do that, if I don't have it there, then it hangs over my head like a bloody dark cloud for the rest of the week, and I can't let it go. And I'm always thinking, oh my God, I've got to write my newsletter. When am I going to get that done? And it just becomes this awful chain around my neck. And I never write from a good place there. Where if I do it on a Monday, like there's a sense that I have focus, and then I enjoy doing it, I enjoy getting it done, and then it's done. And I don't have to worry about that. And that feels good in my body, so I'll do more of that.
Yeah, no, that's great self-awareness there.
It's really good advice as well. I think it's it's a really good way of making sure that you're in the right place to create the content, because then the content that you create reflects the way you're feeling. And I think you can always tell when someone's written a post in a hurry or on the bus or in the post office queue, rather than when they've actually been sat down and given it the time it needs. So
yeah,
I think
right, you guys were saying beforehand that I was saying that I had realized that I am my ideal client, and you said that you were chatting to somebody else on the community today who was like, totally not the right strategy for me. Like, I get triggered by that. Great, like that, awareness of like what makes me feel good. Like for me, I had a sense of relief when I realized I was my own ideal client. It brought so much ease into my life. But that ability to keep following like what feels good. Like, having that curiosity of like, okay, like how all these different options, like what is the thing that makes me, it's not going to be good, what's the thing that has me feel less bad, the least worst, and following that, what creates the 1% sense of softening and expansion in me.
Yeah, I don't want to pick up on what the other community member, who will no doubt be listening back to this, because she is also very fastidious about getting through everything and listening back on everything, and she's amazing and very academic and the best student. But it's funny because I'm inclined to say, why would you not want to, if you're triggered by working with people like you, what does that say? And you can absolutely go and work with someone completely different and probably do a brilliant job transposing all the knowledge that you have onto someone who describes somebody very different to you on the surface, let's say. But my intrigue around that is sort of, is it because it's so deeply triggering that it's just impossible for you to engage with, and what does that say? And I'm interested in that, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, I guess what I'm hearing there is that there's there's stuff that still feels really tender, and that, like, for whatever reason, like that, like working with people in a similar, I imagine, somebody who's experienced sexual violence, for example, may not want to go and be a support function to other survivors of sexual violence, right? That makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean that you have to, not do things until you've done your own healing journey. It's like, that feels like really good self-care and self-awareness to say, yeah, that's not the thing, or it's at least not the thing for now. Like,
you're right. Yeah, this is about knowing your own limits, as you talked about before.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be a perfectionist. You've just called me out on it again. Like, the perfectionist in me is like, must work with people like me, because that means that I've dealt with my own demons and I'm able to help everyone for whom they are demons. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I couldn't possibly be dealing with them well enough if I chose not to work with people like me. Damn it.
Absolutely. And you know what? How wonderfully responsible to potential clients as well, to say, like, actually, I can't show up in a way that I want to as a coach dealing with this issue. I get triggered by it. That stresses me out. I then can't show up compassionately and with kindness and openness and all of the rest of it. So I'm actually doing those people a service by not working with them.
Yeah, love it.
How beautiful.
We've got
good.
10 minutes left. I want to just address this last question before. Sorry, Simon.
That's all right.
So that we haven't not, because I think it's a big one. So I'm just going to ask it, put it out there, and then I'm going to let Simon talk for a bit. What do you aspire to, Vix, especially spiritually? Thank you, Chris.
I noticed the part of me that wants to kind of like dismantle that question, break it into constituent parts. What do I aspire to? I want a big life, a full life, like a life that is full of the whole range of human experience. And I want to be increasingly open to all of that, all of those parts of me, all of the emotions that show up. I think that's ultimately, and I'm sure that will allow me to do some stuff along the way. I feel like the more I can keep saying yes to everything in my own experience, that's going to make it like a really wild ride. Did I get it right?
Simon, I can't take it when you give me too much space. I just I just want to say also, like, Chris and Craig are so brilliant at the whole humour thing, which we were talking about before. Is like, if you can't just see the funny side of it, and I feel like there's an embodiment thing going on there. If you see the funny side of it, you laugh or smile, and then your body does something else, and it's like that was a good coping mechanism.
Yeah. And I just want to say it's also okay not to be able to laugh at it yet. Like, it's, there's again, like when I'm triggered and I'm in a stress response, like the way our brains work, like we can't, so laughter is a great remedy for stress. But in that moment of being triggered and like, there's something in me that's saying this is existential, like I'm under threat and things are going wrong and I'm really in danger right now, then my body can't laugh. So I want to normalize that. I think being able to laugh at yourself is a great sign of healing. But if you're not able to laugh at yourself yet, that's totally okay and it makes total sense.
It's good stuff. Well, I know we could go on for the rest of the afternoon, I'm sure, but I'm also aware that it is your evening, Vix. We need to bring the conversation to a close here. So thank you very much for sharing everything with us. It's been fantastic, enlightening, energizing. Where we've posted a link, I think, to your article already. Is there anywhere else you would like us to signpost people to if they'd like to connect with you or find out more from you?
Yeah, so I think Chris was asking about like how to track cycles, and I've got a little collection of free rebel guides. So there's one around cycles and there's one around embodiment. And so those are at my website. If you go to the Get Started link or free guides. You can download those there. And because I'm into the whole ethical marketing thing, you don't even have to give me your email address. But if you would like to, then you get more stuff that way. And then the other thing is I am hosting a 5-week adventure for recovering perfectionists starting at the beginning of February called Reimagining Resilience. And it is going to be, this, like everything we just talked about today. So we meet for 2 hours a week for 5 weeks to practice with some of this. So it's a little bit less of the doing and a little bit more of the being. So
excellent. That sounds really good. We shall make sure to link to that in the blog we do. We'll put links to all of that in the blog that will be linked underneath this video. So thank you very much for joining us, everybody. We will see you next time, and I'm sure, Vix, we will come back another time to carry on this conversation, because it feels like we've this is chapter one of many.
Oh yeah,
my apologies, because actually we've gone way over time, and I'm so delighted at how imperfect I was in terms of being aware of the time. That's how much I loved it. So thank you.
I know, we could have kept going. I definitely feel there's a whole conversation to have around, like some practical strategies. That's how.
There we go. We've set we've set it up already. Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, everybody. See you all again soon.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.